All right, good day of prep. Guys got some good work. There's certainly some things that USC does that's difficult on third down and red area that we had to prepare for today, but some good progress so far this week.
Questions? Start over here, Eric.
Get your thoughts just on Emmanuel's growth since he's gotten here, and especially in the run game. He and Poncho working together seem like that's been a really dynamic duo for you guys.
Yeah, Emmanuel's done an unbelievable job for us. Been a really good teammate. He brings a level of intensity every single day to practice. Obviously can move bodies. I think he's done really good in running and pass game for us this year.
Matt?
With it being senior day, could you maybe just expand a little bit on just the development your program has had for guys like Bryce and also Noah, and just how much better every year they've gotten and your appreciation of them?
Yeah, I'm forever grateful for those guys for what they've contributed, and to think this could be the last time they get to play on this field. I probably haven't hit it enough, this week for what those guys mean to us and the work that they've put in. I know that we talk about player-led team. It's really driven by those guys, right, and their focus and really the intensity that they bring and the standard that they hold our program to. So really grateful for every one of those guys.
Eric?
Kind of challenges is the fact that Mekhi Lemon plays out of the slot so much, present your defense and trying to get the right matchups there from a personnel perspective.
Yeah, he's a tough matchup. I've spoke on it already how good of a wideout he is, and the fact that they move him around certainly makes it a challenge. It's hard. You've seen some teams try to match up to him, and that can be difficult in certain calls. It also can be an indicator at times, right? If you always match up a certain way of what kind of defense you might be playing. So got to be aware of where he's at all times and be able to handle those adjustments.
John?
Coming into the year, just you think about the physical profile of a guy like Amari at 330 pounds, you'd expect him to be playing a lot more nose on the inside, but that's actually gone down this year compared to what it was last year, and a big part of that has been Bear and what he's been able to do as a defender and playing that nose position at only 300 pounds. What is it about him that makes him so effective being a guy who can play the nose? Because Amari, his best trait is his speed, that he can cross face of guards from a 3-tech and do all those things. That it can unlock everything for else the rest of the defense, especially against the run.
The questions about Bear or Amari?
Bear and how he helps.
Yeah. Ultimately, both those guys inside pretty versatile. They give us a lot of tools. They're hard to block. I think one thing that they both possess is the quickness and twitch inside, but then the ability to anchor and runs is really important in our defense and how we do things. You got to be able to strike blocks. Those guys have shown that consistently. Bear certainly improved in that in a big way and continues to be a better and better player each week.
James?
Dan Kirby spoke quite a bit over the last week about physicality, the importance of it there. Obviously, you've instilled a lot of that in the culture here. How much do you echo a lot of that sentiment? But also, do you feel that when there were questions about joining the Big Ten and whether this program and the West Coast program is going to be up to the physicality of this league, that you've gone about answering those questions in particular because of the culture that you've gone about instilling?
Yeah, I don't think you can be a good football team and not be physical. And there's just certain things that have to happen at practice, certain things you have to train for it to show up. You're not going to become a good tackling team if you don't tackle at practice. You're not going to be good at blocking if you don't do, full tilt boogie when it comes to blocking and shedding blocks. Like those things have to happen at practice for you to do it. As far as answering questions, we'll just let our play, kind of speak for that. I think we've done a good job in that category.
Matt?
We've reached that point in the year where there's a lot of outside noise, playoff talk, end of season talk, and now we're starting to see reports of guys from other programs hitting the portal when they haven't even announced anything yet. Your players may want to be here personally, but people in their camp may be trying to poke the bear a little bit. How do you kind of handle that conversation internally and keep the focus on where your feet are at right now?
Yeah, you can't spend too much time on it. You got to worry about the guys that want to be here. Ultimately, you always hope there's a conversation. I'm certain we have a good team. So what's that mean? That means people are probably reaching out to our players. We've been able to retain great players here for a long time. We've done a really good job of that, and I think that starts with guys being open and honest. There's going to be communication, and sometimes it's best for somebody to be somewhere else. But we're trying to do something special here, and it means being focused on where you're at, right now. And the reality is, the portal opens in January. It doesn't open now. You got time to evaluate, those options for you, and each person has to evaluate those options for themselves. I love the team we have, love the players. Everybody has a special role here for us. Even if you're not necessarily out there on the field for us every single down, that's part of it, right? But it's also part of what's going on in college football, and the teams that manage that the best and handle that the best are going to be the teams that have been successful. And we've had a lot of success with how we've managed that here in the past. Hopefully, like I said, the one thing you want the opportunity to have conversation with guys before that becomes something you're not aware of.
On the right, Zach?
mentioned being physical and practicing hard, tackling, doing all that. How do you balance that and also trying to keep guys healthy? And late in the season, people are getting dinged up, making sure they stay fresh but also stay healthy.
Yeah, you evaluate what kind of drill work you're doing and how you're doing that. Sometimes you can split things into like a half line drill, do stuff more in indie crossover drills to where there can be a level of contact, but maybe not as many bodies on the ground. And then you adapt. You definitely certainly change some things to how you practice at times, especially getting later in the season. Uniquely, some of the injuries we've had this season have had zero contact, right? So contact's part of football. That happens, but some of the times the guys get hurt, that's not necessarily directly impacted by the physicality that's required at practice. And I've found that teams that practice not to get hurt are the teams that get hurt the most a lot of times. So you have to practice at a certain level. Football can be a dangerous sport. There's going to be injuries that exist at times. We have to be able to handle those as they come.
Back right, Aaron.
I know a big part of your program is just the verbiage that you use, and every week there's a different theme or a different motto that kind of relates to the opponent. And I think it's really interesting to see, even all the way back to Penn State. Death by 1,000 cuts. You still have players in the Ducks versus them that are saying that's a cut on the sideline in those videos. Just to have players that are really bought into that verbiage and the theme and really motivated by that. At this point in the season now where you're inching closer to the postseason, how important is that just to have players that are truly bought in and really all in on the messaging, the verbiage, and what role does that play now in this world and age of college football?
Yeah, the word, culture gets thrown around a lot in college football. I think whenever you know that your culture is really taking place and set is when everybody has a unified message. And when you hear some of those, continued messages throughout and really coming from your players more so than your coaches and people that preach that in your program. But our players share that vision. They're pulling in the same direction. And certainly that's great to see.
Matt.
Another one of those, there's always things going on outside of the games. Recruiting, signing days about a month away. Just how do you feel like your program's at, where you're at in this weekend, the opportunity this presents of final home game day being here, ranked opponent, USC, just what can that do for you guys?
Yeah, recruiting's the lifeblood of our program. And for us here, it's always been about, quality over quantity, about what kind of players do we want to sign, the guys that are going to fit our mold. And then always looking kind of big picture down the road. What's that look like for your team? What's going to be available for your team postseason as you're trying to develop that? But we have a staff that's dedicated to that, evaluating that at all times. And always number one for us will be able to be, keeping the players that we have on our current roster as well as the additions that, we can add in the future. But weekends like this with the distractions, with all the pieces that are going on, that can be huge weekends for you in recruiting. And we've been able to live off of moments like that here in the past and certainly want to be able to take advantage of it this weekend.
Back right here.
Marcus is just being honored this week, inducted into the Hall of Fame. You guys got the jerseys to honor him. And it seems like Oregon does a really good job of honoring a lot of players and people that are involved in the program. Just what is your idea or your vision, your sense of the impact that Marcus has had on the program, even just not even coaching him, but just being here for the past 4 seasons and just seeing his impact still on the university?
Yeah, Marcus is a guy that we're just so proud of, here, and to see the level that he's been able to play out here and then carry that on to the NFL. I walked up the field last week and I saw, his wife Kiyomi and Sabrina and Horonis. I mean, our players that have played here in the past, they come back and they give so much, and we just want them to know we want them to be a part of what we're doing and to get the opportunity to honor a guy like Marcus. He's very deserving. Obviously, had an unbelievable career here and then an unbelievable career in the NFL. But we're glad that they want to be a part of what's going on here at Oregon and continue to have a sense of pride in the fact that they got to play here. So really proud of him and happy for him.
James.
Following on the recruiting question, Dan, certainly I think everybody would like to preach a message of quality over quantity, but you guys certainly live it a little bit differently than others. Can you get into philosophically how you and Marshall now in cycle 4 of this have gone about raising the floor to where you can live that life? You don't have to cast as wide a net as somebody at year 1 or 2 of a program and building things and the like, that you really can embody what you're talking about there.
Yeah, and everything now is different with value base and what guys are, what it costs to get somebody to. And some of the best players that have been of our program are guys that we got at a tremendous value, and they were able to come here. And then when you make an impact at a tremendous value, you're able to be taken care of as well. But that's a factor in this. But for us, it's culture fit, it's skill level. I think we've proven on both sides of the ball that we'll adapt to our personnel too and their strengths and their skill sets. So when you find a good football player that maybe doesn't necessarily fit your scheme, being able to adapt your scheme to fit to those players is really important. But we'll always kind of have our eye out for that guy that's an extremely talented player, but an extremely hard worker, has, fits the right culture that we're looking for, is going to be able to handle being in an environment like this. And that's a continued process. That's continued evaluation. That's a lot of conversations.